From Black Friday with all the buying, credit cards to Christmas get-togethers, gift getting and gift wrapping, we hear Silent Night sung by our favorite singer on the speakers in our favorite department store, while we stand in line to buy gifts we really can't afford, for people we hardly talk to at any other time of the year. Peace on Earth? This is insanity. What if this was the year we took it back? This can be the year, our year, when we put down the garland and strings of Christmas lights as the heralds of the season and look into the eyes of Christmas. Hope, peace, joy, love. This year, the battle for Christmas.
Well, good morning, everybody. Hey, I'm so glad you're here today. If you're in the house and you're a guest, thank you so much for being here. We are so excited by your presence with us this morning. If you're joining us online, I hope you are half as comfortable as I am. And hopefully you're not sick or anything, but we're so glad that you're able to be with us. I don't normally sit in a chair like this, but it's pretty rad, isn't it? And anyway, if you get to join us in person sometime, you'll see the rest of this incredible set we have for the month of December. But whether you're online joining us, thank you so much. Whether you're in the house joining us, thank you so much. Because I absolutely love this time of year. It is so full of expectation and Christmas magic. I mean, you know, you got to understand something about me, and if you've been hanging around here for a while, maybe since last Christmas, maybe since the very first time, my first Christmas here at the church, I absolutely love Christmas. I am part Christmas elf. You know, if you check my blood type, it's peppermint. You know, I married someone who's part Christmas elf, and we're raising 2 children that are part Christmas elf, and I'm telling you, here's what that means. What that means is that Christmas, I gotta show you the socks too. Christmas never really stops for me. I mean, it just goes year round. You know, so Christmas movies are shown throughout the year at my house, except in the middle of summer, because like my wife Patty gets tired of seeing them. Weird, huh? So we have to stop for a few months in there. But we also celebrate Leon Day. That's on June 25th. It's Noel backwards. Okay, but Leon Day is an actual holiday. It's the exact halfway point between last Christmas and next Christmas. Note to self, okay? Keep up with that. July 25th, Christmas in July, we put up a little Christmas tree. The kids buy an ornament, because there are some stores that have Christmas stuff out that early, and I love them. I know them all like 3 of them, but I know where they are. And so the kids get to buy their little ornament for the year, because they have a Christmas tree in their room. Just like Patty and I have a Christmas tree in our room. Then we have the big one in the living room. It's just wonderful. And, you know, so when the rest of you all catch up with me, I'm always the guy going, welcome, where you been? I've been hanging out here for 11 months. Glad you're with me on the December journey. Absolutely love this stuff. I'm the guy that never grew up. Don't ever grow up. It's a total scam. Live as a kid. It's an incredible life. But whether you're like me and you are a Christmas junkie, because a little part of you never grew up, or you are just now getting into it, or maybe you're really true to tradition and you don't really start celebrating Christmas until December 25th, because it's Advent until December 25th, and then you get 12 days of Christmas. You do know the song is not leading up to Christmas. It is starting on December 25th and goes for 12 days. So if you're doing the gifts of 12 days of Christmas, you got a few weeks still. But whether you catch up or whether you're with me the entire time, you have to stop at some point and ask yourself, why? Why all the fuss? Why all the gussying up? Why all the stuff? Why do we do all of this? Because there's a little piece of us that wants to go back to our childhood. You know, when things were just a little bit more magical. When we didn't understand how Christmas lights worked, they just twinkled. It was just magical. When those colors just seemed a little brighter than they do as we're a little older, and presents and even the family get-togethers weren't quite so bad. You know, and then we get a little older, maybe our teenage years, and we start to I don't know, just not quite as bright anymore as it used to be. Not quite as magical because we understand electricity and that someone had to plug that in for that to magically work. And someone had to hang the ornaments. And suddenly it's just not, when you know the secret behind it, it just, Then we get to be young adults and we start already speaking about seeing Christmas through the eyes of a child. Why? That was the last time it was magical. And so we go through all of this fuss every single year, and wow, Christmas, it seems, was stolen indeed. But instead, perhaps it was traded for dreams. Maybe we just have these hopes that if we just do a little bit more Christmas stuff, we get to recapture the feeling. Maybe if we buy that perfect gift for that special someone, that's going to bring that feeling back. Maybe if we receive that special gift, we're going to get that feeling back. And then we set ourselves up for it every year, don't we? And maybe you're one of those folks that kind of identifies with Cindy Lou Who from How the Grinch Stole Christmas, when she's saying, "Where are you, Christmas? Why can't I find you? Why have you gone away? Where's the laughter you used to bring me? Why can't I hear music play?" You know, that magic of when a red-nosed reindeer goes from zero to hero and saves Christmas and teaches Santa a good lesson about humility, might I add. Or when a snowman comes magically to life because of a hat that kids find and he thumps through everywhere and gets himself in all kinds of trouble. Or a little boy who was struggling with his belief in Santa and a magic train comes on Christmas Eve and whisks him away to the North Pole where he's encouraged to believe. Man. No wonder we get all depressed on December 26th. I mean, my goodness, I think we do this kind of to ourselves. And yet there are times we have to stop and go, where's the hope that we talk about? Where's this hope that we light candles about? Where's the hope? Because everything we have around us is screaming temporary. And that's a lot prettier. I mean, come on, lights and red and green and shiny. But we know that's going to go away. And some of you are already feeling it, and you're just now a few days past Black Friday. You know, there are people in the Bible who can identify with that. They can identify with wrapping up all their hopes and their dreams and their thoughts and their wishes and hanging that on something, only for that something to dissolve and go away, and them to be left going, well, I have a choice. Accept the glitz and glamour and to struggle with that, or to accept something that is a little more infinite but is a lot better promise. As we start this series, The Battle for Christmas, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to capture something different this year. We're trying to steal this Christmas thing back. No, not from society. From ourselves. I have seen the enemy, and we are they. It's us. We are the ones that have to steal it back in our hearts. So we pick up the story today with King David in 2 Samuel chapter 7. We're doing the whole chapter. 2 Samuel chapter 7, King David is really at a high point in his life, early in his kingship. So we're hundreds of years before Jesus, way Old Testament here. In 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 1 through 3, we pick up the story right here. It says, after the king settled in his palace, and that king is King David, after the king settled in his palace and the Lord had given him rest from all the enemies around him, he said to Nathan the prophet, "Here I am living in a house of cedar while the ark of God remains in a tent." Nathan replied to the king, "Whatever you have in mind, go ahead and do it, for the Lord is with you." Now David had a hope that he would give a gift to God. And this gift was an act of worship. It was a response to what God had done for him. God had given him the rest from all of his enemies. God had done what a king would only dream of. He had essentially given him peace in his nation. On top of that, God had already given him tremendous wealth, and he had this palace of cedar. And he's living the good life as a king, but he realizes, wait a minute, this isn't right. That I'm living like this, and God has been so good to me, but the ark of God, the ark of the covenant, this symbol, this golden chest that was a symbol of God's presence and God's power and God's mercy to his people. He said that symbol that represents my God is sitting in a beaten up tent while I'm enjoying the luxury God has provided me. And so David's thinking, this isn't good. I want to build a house for God. I want to build a temple. I want to build something that all the nations will see. This is what our God has done. And Nathan the prophet had been with David for a while now. He knows David. He knows God is with him. And he goes, hey, whatever you have your heart set on, God's with you, man, do it. But then Nathan has a vision that night from the Lord. And the Lord speaks to Nathan. What often happens with these prophets is they get the vision from the Lord and they relay it to the king. So in the next several verses, the chunk of the chapter is spent with Nathan's vision this night when he's receiving this vision from God. Because the problem is God never asked David to do this. God never asked David to build him a house. God didn't ask for this gift. And you may say, well, what's the big deal with that? Don't get ahead of me. The fact is God didn't ask for it, and we find in parallel passages to 2 Samuel that God specifically said, David, because you are a man of war, you will not build a house for me. Your son will, but you won't. So Nathan, after just that day having said, hey man, David, whatever you have your mind set to, God's with you, build on. That night he gets the vision. God says, no, David will not build this house. And by the way, Nathan, you've got to go tell him that tomorrow. Oh, man. Instead, what God actually does is the Lord then actually gives this vision to Nathan to give to David that God is going to establish an eternal kingdom for David. Now you may say, wow, David got the better end of the deal. That is not what David wanted. I mean, certainly in a sense he wanted his kingdom to go on forever, but this is what his heart was set on. He was all excited about building this temple. This was his act of worship to God. This was the guy that wrote a lot of the Psalms in the Old Testament. This guy's heart just beat for the Lord, and everything he did, he wanted to do for the Lord, and now the Lord is saying, no, you're not going to do this one thing, the one thing your heart is set on. You're not going to do. But instead, God caused him to accept a promise he would never see. So God promises an eternal kingdom, but the problem is David's a human. David's going to die. He's not going to see this eternal promise. He's going to see his son, and that was good news. He was promised a son. He was promised that Solomon, who we'd end up knowing, would build the temple. He was given all that, but at the moment, So Nathan is receiving this vision. And here's what the second part of verse 11 through 16, this is part of the vision that Nathan has from the Lord. And here's this message. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. The you is David right there. When your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood. And I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name. And I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. When he does wrong, I will punish him with a rod wielded by men, with floggings inflicted by human hands. But my love will never be taken away from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed before you. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. Nathan reported to David all the words of this entire revelation. This is a rare thing for a prophet. Most of the time, all they get to say is bad news. He actually got to deliver a little bit of a silver lining on the news. He got to go, okay, David, you had your heart set on this temple, and I know what I told you yesterday, but you're not going to get to build the temple, but this is what God is going to do. He's going to give you this eternal house. Now, David's already in his physical house, so we already figured it out. We're not talking about a physical house. God is going to give him an eternal bloodline, that his succession plan will go on forever. Now, David didn't see any of this happen. He's not going to witness it with his eyes. He had to accept it by faith. But so tremendous is David's faith that in verses 18 through 29, the rest of the chapter, he is just praising God and glorifying the Lord and thanking him for that amazing, incredible grace that he would never see in his lifetime. And he's asking God to bless the house of David. Now, that may seem a little arrogant. I mean, it's a little self-serving at least to go, Lord, bless my house. But it's not, because it's not a sin to ask God to do what he already promised he's going to do. He'd already been told that God was going to establish his household. He'd already been told God's going to give him an everlasting throne. He's already told him that. He's saying, God, do exactly what you said you're going to do. I mean, even in the middle of the faith, there's that bit of an angle of, I need a little more faith to even accept this. So do what you said you're going to do. Let all this happen. And you think, okay, that's really good news. I mean, David's going to have an eternal throne. Yeah, it's good, great, good for David. How does that affect what's going to affect me on December 26th? How's that going to affect me with all the Christmas stuff that just gets me all amped up just to collapse? How does that help me? That's the best part of the story. Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, very beginning of the New Testament, starts to answer that question. It says, this is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah. The son of whom? David, the son of Abraham. Now we're going to skip all that. We're going to go down to verse 17. Thus there were 14 generations from Abraham to David. There's our king. 14 from David to the exile in Babylon, and 14 from the exile to the Messiah. When that baby was born in Bethlehem, David was long dead for hundreds of years. He was in heaven watching it from heaven's perspective. But all the hopes and dreams and desires of the people of God came to fruition on that one still night. And the promise made to King David so long ago finally found fulfillment in the eternal Son of God, robed in flesh, legally and biologically the heir to David's throne. Now, there was no way David was going to see that happening. But here's the thing, y'all. We are living in the era of that fulfillment. We are living in the proof that what God starts, He will finish. And every single Christmas, when society catches up to us, when they catch up to our language, when they catch up to the words hope and peace and joy and love, those themes of Advent, when they catch up to what we are saying, we get an opportunity now to inject the truth of the promise of God that took thousands of years for Him to work through. See, it may seem like God is slow in keeping His promises, but He still keeps them. And He works out these plans. He works out this hope that we have and the hope that we sing about, this hope that is bound up in a manger scene because it is the proof of what He promised to David that David never saw. He completely had to accept it by faith. So if you want to steal Christmas back, if you want to have a solution for what you're feeling you might feel in a few weeks about this time next month, here's the secret. Stealing Christmas means capturing Christ Mass. You see, that's where we get the word Christmas from, Christ Mass, which means, literally, it means the worship of Christ. Christ is Jesus' title. It's like calling Him Messiah. Jesus the Christ, Jesus the Messiah. It's not His last name. We get the word Christ or Christ, Christmas from Christ Mass, the worship of the Savior, the Son of God, the Messiah. Every time we say Christmas, we are declaring the truth that God will fulfill every promise He has made, and every promise He's made to you, He will fulfill. That's what we celebrate every single Christmas, and it comes around annually. It's like a great cycle to remind us that the same God that promised David He would establish his bloodline is the same God that made us one of His kids because of that descendant of David, because of that bloodline. It's so easy for us to get caught up in what we don't have, and we forget what we do have. We forget what we are. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, a phenomenal verse says this: we are God's handiwork. Look at that. We are God's handiwork. Do you understand? Every single one of you and every single human being, every single Christian on the planet bears the image of God, that we are living, breathing statues to the creative, infinite power of God Almighty. Our very existence is proof that God is who He is. You are God's handiwork. You are His craftsmanship. You are His expertise on display. Now, as Christians, why are we this? We are created in Christ Jesus to do what? To do good works. That doesn't change just because it's December. our lives still aren't about us. It's still about other people. See, we get all depressed because we start trying to make ourselves happy, and we forget that even Christmas, the real Christmas, was actually about fulfilling other people. And God had this plan for us in advance. Even before he made that promise to King David, he already had that plan in motion. He already had that goal, that hope that he gives us. He already had that plan working before he ever created anything. He already had everything mapped out. This is a God that has a roadmap that I can't even begin to imagine. And all history is the proof that God is weaving and working all throughout history to bring us to today. And we stand in this season of seeing that everything he promised King David is true, and it happened. Everything he spoke through the prophets happened. And through this series, we're going to see piece by piece by piece by piece how God has woven his story throughout history, sometimes in the most mundane things. He's put his fingerprints on it, and he asks us to see and be amazed. See, when we can do that, when we can capture Christ's mass, when we can keep our eyes and our hearts fixed on Jesus, see, that's when we start capturing real Christmas. You know, King David didn't argue with Nathan. He didn't say, well, you know what? God is still so good to me, Nathan. I hear what you're saying, buddy, but I'm just going to build just a little shed. I'm going to build a Lord shed, just small. Nathan, it's not going to be big. You can't even call it a temple. And he didn't do any of that. So he had to live out the rest of his days in his cedar palace with his wealth and everything God had given him, while he has to look out and see the ark of God in a tent. And he had to live with that the rest of his life in hopes that God would do everything he said he was going to do. Remember, David never saw the temple. He never saw the fulfillment of the promise except when he held his son Solomon. That's the closest he would have gotten to seeing all this. But he had to accept it by faith. He had to accept what God called him to accept by faith and accept what he was given and forget what he wasn't given. See, we want to do the opposite. We want to hang on to what we're not given and kind of say, okay, that faith thing's going to work itself out, but I can see this. David didn't do that. He could have said, no, I'm going to go ahead and build the temple anyway. I can see that. But he had to let that go, and he had to accept what he was given, which was a promise that required tremendous faith. And so should we. We got to let go of those things that we're not given so we can hang on to those things that we have been given. And I have 3 ideas to help you do that this week. First, cliche as it sounds, keep Christ in Christmas this week. I know it's a cliche, but just because it's a cliche doesn't mean it's not true. Okay? It's something we need to do. How are you going to keep Christ in Christmas this week? We got to pray about that. I don't know what that necessarily means for you. I know what it means for me. But think about, what did Jesus come to do? He came to serve. He came to give himself away. How can you give yourself away this week? This week. Forget December 25th for a moment. This week. Battles are won a skirmish at a time. So how are you going to fight this week's skirmish? How are you going to do that? How are you going to keep Christ in your Christmas this week? Second idea, buy or display a nativity scene in a prominent spot in your home. Now, for some of you, the key word there is buy because you don't own one. Fine. Hit up the stores, go buy one. You can buy a cheap one, you can buy an elaborate one. You can buy 10, I don't care, okay? But the key phrase to this really is nativity scene in a prominent spot. You know, your kitchen table, your countertop, your computer desk, your end table, your coffee table that serves as your footstool for, sipping cocoa, whatever. But you're going to put that nativity scene where you can see it because it's the constant reminder of the fulfillment of God's promises. That constant visual reminder that God will finish what he started. The constant visual reminder that baby wasn't just a baby. That baby wasn't just born to give us something cute to set out. You see, the nativity scene is a symbol. Symbols are very powerful for us. We need these symbols. That nativity scene is a symbol for us. It reminds us of all the hopes and the dreams and the promises that God has ever given us, and the fulfillment in sometimes the most unexpected ways. See, we need those little nativity scenes. By the way, if it has magi in them, please put them in the next room because they weren't there when Jesus was born. But that's a whole other subject. Some of you are going to struggle with that all afternoon. Go look it up. I'll get back to you in a few weeks. Third, I'm going to get you back with me, I promise, because that drives me nuts. Anyway, third one is on your way out today, we're going to give you a book that our staff team wrote. We talked about it on Facebook. We've been talking about it for a while. They are hot off the presses. It's called The Battle for Christmas. It goes along with this series. It's a daily devotional for Advent and Christmas. It's something we're going to do all together as a church family. Every family walking out of here, every couple walking out of here, every single person walking out of here, we're going to give you one of these for free today at the doors as you leave. Today is December 1st, so it actually starts on day 1. It works out because today's December 1st. You do one, they're short. This is a whole one right here. It's just 2 little pages. You can do this in a few minutes, but it's a way that we can really capture Christ Mass. We can capture centering our hearts and our minds on the Lord Jesus. And it's written by our staff team. Treasurer Simeon, our children's director, and I did about half of it. And then we were also joined by Edna Bordwell, Sherry Collins, my wife Patty, Sam Herskew, and Tony Simeon. A lot of us got involved in this. We're giving this to you for free today because we want to make sure that you track with us through this entire month and that you realize that Christmas isn't a holiday. Christmas is a day of celebration and a day that reminds us that God will fulfill His promises. And that every promise He's made to you, He will fulfill. Every difficult moment you face, He's already leading you through it. The toughest thing you're facing right now is the brightest spot in your testimony. It is what will be used later to encourage someone else. We're talking about that next week. Because God has some big plans for us through this battle for Christmas. He has a big idea for us to be able to capture something that we think we might have lost. Because Christmas, it seems, was stolen, indeed. But perhaps instead it was traded for dreams. So in this year of 2019, let us decide to make sure to see Christmas, real Christmas. Not with lights and bows, but with ears tuned to Jesus and hearts bowed low.